Hello and welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 533, being recorded on February 20, 2019. I am Sebastian Peak.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Maury Titleman.
And I'm Jim Tanis.
Jim Tanis is the Andy Rooney of this 60 Minutes group.
Don't you hate it when you sit down for a long time and dust starts settling on you? I hate that.
I have no response.
So, Josh, thank you for that. Hey, we have some news for you guys this week and reviews. And in case you don't know how you got here, this is the official podcast of PC Perspective, which we do every week. And most of the time we do it live. We've had a rocky month or so, but we're back to doing it live on a semi-regular basis at 10 p.m. on Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesdays. And to find out when we go live, you can subscribe to what we affectionately call our spam list. We make this promise that we will only send you an email when we're about to go live, whether it's for the podcast or a special event. And we've been pretty consistent with that, I think. I'm a subscriber myself, and I've never gotten any actual spam, so don't worry. But let's get right to it, because we have a lot of news and some reviews to get to this week, starting with you, Jim, who you did a review of the Synology DS1019 Plus.
I did, and apologize, I'm already having trouble switching and thinking. But yes, so I reviewed a new Synology NAS. Synology releases their products twice a year, in the early part of the year and then in the fall. So last year, I think it was last fall, they released a device called the DS918 Plus. And it was a nice little NAS. It had a Celeron processor, quad core, that could do hardware transcoding for video. It had NVMe, like dedicated NVMe slots for caching. And it was 4 bays. And so a lot of people felt constrained by those 4 bays. So now this month, they've released this. This is a pretty much identical variant on the 918 Plus, but with 5 bays. Same number of, or same processor, same board, same RAM capacities. Although this ships with 8. That's the difference. The 918 Plus shipped with 4. So you're going to get 8 out of the gate with this. It's got 2 NVMe caching slots. Same basic design too. It's almost identical. Here, if you can see, if you're watching the video feed, you got the 1019 Plus here. This is the DS1019 Plus. And the 918 here. So very much similar. So that kind of takes a little bit of the excitement out of this one, out of this release, because we've seen all this before. But we didn't review this one in particular, or the 918 Plus, I should say. So it is new to us. Is that, what network was that? NBC? If I haven't seen it, it's new to me. But it's a nice mid-range NAS, but it's got some interesting limitations. So it's only gigabit. There's, if I can find the picture here, it's only got 2 1 gigabit ports on the back. So no 10 gig expansion, no built-in 10 gig, no PCIe slot so you can expand it. So you're going to be limited to 1 gigabit, or if you use the link aggregation, you can get 2, but you've got to have support for 802, I think it's 802.3 AD is the protocol. And you got to have support for that in your switch as well. And not a lot of switches have that, especially the switches that people who'd be buying this would probably have. So if you can't do link aggregation, you can still use both ports for load balancing or failover. But it's for a device constrained by gigabit networking. It's fast, it's quiet, it's running Synology's Disk Station Manager software, which in my opinion is still the best out there. It's very easy to install apps, very easy to get your storage set up backups, set up snapshots to protect your data. And the interesting thing is, if you see the pictures here, you've got these 2 M.2 slots on the bottom, and these are NVMe M.2, because M.2 can be SATA or NVMe, and it's using NVMe. So that's the higher performance, higher cost drives. And there's not a lot you can use in this form factor with this CPU to take advantage of that. Now, if this was a beefy, enterprise grade NAS with a Xeon processor or, something just beefier, you could be running database servers, you could be running VMs, and you could really take advantage of that performance from the NVMe's. But with the Celeron, I mean, you can do a little bit, but I just don't see how many people or how many small businesses are going to be able to take advantage of that, are going to find value in doing it, with having that fast storage, that fast cache, but being limited by the network connection and the processor. So if you kind of ignore that, I mean, you could use them. Most home workloads aren't going to see a benefit, but so assuming you ignore that and you look at it just as a nice little NAS, the big key from the previous Synology models is the hardware transcoding, because these are great for Plex. And even if you're not using Plex, you can use Synology's own software, which does video transcoding. I think it's called Video Station. So we benchmarked that, and using Plex, it can do 5 1080p transcodes simultaneously from an untouched Blu-ray MKV rip. So it's compressed, but it's compressed as it was on the original disc. So from that full 30 to 50 megabit source file down to 8 megabits, you can do 5 simultaneous transcodes. And that's pretty good. That's going to cover a lot of users. Looking at it just on a software transcode, I can do just 2 before it really chokes. But there's an additional benefit to having the hardware transcoder, is not only do you get more, but it doesn't tax your processor. So if you see this image here on the site with those 5 transcodes going, your CPU is only at 50%. So if somebody else is accessing the NAS to do, data storage or backups or whatever, you're not going to be causing an issue there. So like I said, it's not a very exciting thing. We've seen this before. This is pretty much identical specs. It's nice to get the 8 gigs of RAM out of the gate. I will note that Synology says that 8 gigs is the max. So it ships with 8, which is 2x4, their DDR3, but some users have reported that 16 is the unofficial limit. So if you did want to go to 16, you could do that. It's $649.99 without drives, and that's $100 more than the 918 Plus. However, if you're a power user, if you have any experience with faster than gigabit networking, look at the 1618 Plus, which is what we reviewed last fall. It's $749, but it's 6 bays, and it has a PCIe slot. So you can add a 10 gig NIC, which is what we did in our testing. You get less RAM out of the gate. It's 4 gigs that it ships with, but it goes to a max of 32, and the processor doesn't support hardware transcoding. So again, if you're buying this solely for Plex, the 1019 might be a better buy. But in terms of overall flexibility, room to grow, performance with greater than gigabit networking, it's a tough call. I mean, I would personally go with the 1618 Plus, but there's options there. And I note too, QNAP is probably Synology's biggest competitor in the pre-built, turnkey NAS market. And they were behind for a while, but they've been very aggressive in recent years. They have models all across the price range with built-in 10 gig or, even multiple 10 gig ports, or built-in caching with NVMe, or just dedicated like mSATA ports. And their software is getting better. The QNAP Manager, I still prefer Disk Manager, Synology's Disk Station Manager, but the QNAP software is getting better. So QNAP is really hot on Synology's heels here. I don't have any issues with reliability with either company. So if you're not impressed by the specs here, take a look at QNAP and maybe even wait, because I think that QNAP's product launches this year is going to force Synology to make some more aggressive changes in their next refresh. So that's the DS1019 Plus, $650. Well, good performing, but limited, because you do kind of get stuck with that gigabit interface.
Come on, man. 8 bay or bust. You gotta spend that $1,300.
Sure, but you can expand. There's they offer expansion modules for all their products. So
sure,
interesting. Even the smaller ones, like the 4 bay, you can get an expansion for that.
Well, the 918 Plus, yes, it's eSATA based expansion.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Anybody have any more thoughts about the NAS?
You know, I've been working with Synology stuff for quite a while, and this is in the enterprise area. And we had the 8-base stuff, and for the amount of things you can do with these, it's kind of impressive. I mean, you go in there, they've got 3 or 4 dozen apps that you can install and do multiple things. Hyper vault backup. We're using it with Backblaze, and the amount of stuff that you can do with these is really impressive. And so it's they've been solid products for us for what we've been using them for, and I'm sure Jim has gone over these things in detail and ad nauseum, but yeah, the overall experience with Synology is really, really positive. It's good stuff for the price that you pay and what you can actually get for free once you dig in, get into the apps, and start, getting the things that you need to do with it.
Yeah, the app platforms, and it's the same on QNAP as well, are awesome. It's one-click installs. They have a range of apps, everything from consumer level stuff to enterprise stuff. Docker, you can run your import Dockers with like 2 clicks. Backups to Backblaze or Amazon. Back up to a network volume on your network, just to have it going to another NAS or just a shared network folder. You can run a WordPress if you want to spin up a website real quick to test something. It can be a WordPress server, dozens, if not hundreds of apps. And there's even third-party app stores you can install or repositories you can access. So tons of stuff, including Plex. That's how you can set up Plex. It's one click and you're done. So from a software side, Synology and QNAP are great.
Okay, let's move to Maury. Maury, we have not seen you on the podcast in a long time. How are you doing?
Good. It's been a
More,
while.
you look well and you look employed.
And I look very rested too, probably.
Yes.
A
I like
3 month
staying at home.
vacation will do that for you.
Maury, I was on a 3-year vacation at home. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, but you didn't. But see, the difference is you didn't get paid for it, though. I'm still technically, I'm not an employee of Thomson Reuters anymore, but they're still paying me till April, or middle
That's
April.
awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just
Good
it's
work if you can get
layoff
it.
crap. But yeah.
All right.
So
Hey, you did a couple of reviews actually. You had 2 different water blocks that you've reviewed. I have not gotten the other one up on the site yet, but the Aquacomputer Kryos water block you did finish, and I did post that. You wanna
yes,
guide
the
us through?
Aquacomputer Cuplex Kryos. Aquacomputer is a German-based company. So some of the page links you may have to do some translation on if you bring them up. But it's a very well-known, very well-respected water cooling company. Their latest block is this Cuplex Kryos Next. Their naming isn't great. I mean, their previous generation was Cuplex Kryos. But the biggest change they made with this was the total amount of configurable models they have out with it. They also include something called Vision with it. That's an actual microprocessor driven module that actually sits on the water block itself and will measure flow rate as well as temperature of the block and the coolant going through it. The version I tested did not have it. This was actually a block that I bought off of a retail site. This wasn't actually a review sample that we got from Aquacomputer. But the model I got was basically just it's an all copper construction. It's got a jet impingement plate on it. The cool thing with their design was that the jet impingement plate, unlike a lot of other companies that use jet impingement technology, their jet impingement chamber is actually embedded in the top part of the water block itself. It makes taking it apart and putting it together really easy. However, they do use hex head screws on that, which you have to get a star driver to get them out instead of using Philips head, which would be nice, but they are a German company, so they tend to do strange things in Europe sometimes. It's an all copper construction. It's nickel plated, which is nice. It uses a microchannel design, so you do get a little flow restriction through it, but you get very good cooling. This is actually, as far as performance goes, this is probably one of the highest performing blocks I've tested. The only, probably performance-wise, the only block to perform better than this one was the Coolant's CPU 390 block. As far as this mounting cage goes, for the LGA 11.5X, it's got the back plate with a rubber grommet, as you can see in the picture, and then it has the mounting poles that go through the board, and it's got thumb screws and springs that hold the block in place. That mounting bracket is both for the 11.5X and the AMD. The AM3 socket for AMDs. The AM4 socket, which is a Ryzen 2, and the LGA 2011 sockets, those don't have a backplate or mounting poles. The thumb screws simply screw into the existing mounting bracket on the board itself. That kind of makes it can make installation a little bit tricky because you have to physically hold the block while you're tightening the screws down. But it's not too bad, really, especially since you're not dealing with naked dies like back in the day. But it's a very well constructed block. As I said, it performed very well. It's all copper. It comes with, it has a variety of configurations. You can get an acrylic top. You can get the top with and without the vision module in it. They actually sell a super high end version that's silver. It's a copper top with a silver base. That one though is like $200 or something because silver is ungodly expensive. Well, at least when you go water cooling. But here you can actually see the microchannel design. They use, I think it's a 20. It's very finely. The microchannels are very finely finned. Along the outside of that, you can actually see the collection chamber. Basically, a jet impingement plate will forces it into that center line right there, and the water goes. The coolant then goes to the side and collects. The collection is actually on the opposite side of the next logo that's embedded in the block itself. So it's a very, very nice design. It works very well. That's really, and the other nice thing comes with Thermal Grizzly, which is very high end thermal paste. I for the testing, we used the just some it's the God, I don't remember what the name of that stuff is, but it's just some. It's not high end paste at all, but paste really. Buys you maybe a couple degrees. We use the MG Chemicals H60 paste for testing. But as you can see, that's the stock temp. Stock temps, you really aren't going to see much variance there. With this review, we only did Ryzen 2 testing. The reason for that was that as I was doing the Ryzen 2 block testing, the Ryzen 2 temperatures overclocked were excessively high. I mean, they were approaching, anywhere from 90 to 100 degrees. The amount of blocks, some of you may ask, why aren't there more blocks here? The blocks that I tested, I tried testing all the latest generation blocks that I had. The blocks that are shown in the review and in the performance graphs are the only ones that actually passed when it was overclocked for Ryzen 2. So you should see, this should give you a really good estimate of how it will perform on a 2011 board or on an 11.5X board as well. On 11.5X and 2011, it's going to probably be a little bit cooler than on a Ryzen 2. So But as you can see here, yes.
Is the 2700X one of the Ryzens that has the temperature offset, or is that just the 2700? I don't remember.
Well, so the way that the Ryzen 2, the temperature sensor in it, it's got two temperature sensors. One is one is an offset, and then one reads true temperature. At least the way it's shown in Core Temp and in Ada.
Okay.
So you can, or not, sorry, not Ada, in Hardware Info 64. But as long as it usually the package temp, I think, is the temperature that it reports by default is, I think, 10 to 20 degrees C higher than the actual temp. So you have to be really careful when you're monitoring the temps there. But the temps shown in review are offsets. Those are based on a 20 to, or I think my room was somewhere between 23 and 27 degrees C. So you can see that the temps are still in the 90s for the max temps. But yeah, as far as the performance goes, though, you can see the Coolance is the top, was a top performing block, but the Aquacomputer was right on its heels. The XSPC Raceron Pro is one of the most popular blocks that performs well also, but not as well as the Aquacomputer. So it's just differences, slight differences in design. Sebastian mentioned SwiftTech Apogee. You can see that kind of fell behind. That is one of the only ones in this lineup that does not use a jet impingement plate. That one is just a straight microchannel grid design. So you have the coolant coming in, you have the coolant going out, and it flows through the microchannels. There's no with the jet impingement plate. You basically have a channel that the water's forced through in the center to speed it up, and then it goes through the microchannels either way and collects in the rest of the block. So that's why the jet impingement plates tend to be a little bit more optimized for targeted heat loads like you have on CPUs. So, but the only downside of this block is it's very expensive. I mean, even the configuration I got, that's about $100 block, but it is worth it. I mean, if you're going to do water cooling, it's the more money you spend, the better performance you're going to get, especially if you're going to do overclocking. Some of the weaknesses I mentioned: difficult switching out block mounting brackets. The mounting brackets are actually embedded in channels in the top. Most people aren't going to change out the mounting brackets. That's why I didn't really ding it much on that. It's just something I mentioned. The other thing that was odd with it was that you cannot get replacement tops for it. Like if in my case, you buy the all copper block without the vision. Say I want to get the vision module, I'd have to buy a whole nother block. I can't just get a top that has the vision module embedded in it. That's just a weakness in the supply chain of Aquacomputer. It's not, because a lot of other companies will offer just replacement tops. Aquacomputer just at this point is choosing not to. So
okay. I mean, yeah, it's expensive, but hey, it's the thing that's actually making contact with your CPU. So I know that GPU blocks can get really pricey. All right. Well, thank you, Maury. We will move into some of our massive list of news for this week with a massive bunch of Computex rumors. This is something that actually Tim posted on the site. Jeremy, is this something that you have investigated? I know that we've heard a lot about Ryzen, like the timing of Ryzen's release. Obviously, we've already been told it's mid 2019. At least that was like the slides. I know that AnandTech had those slides back at CES. But what are they saying? What are these sources saying about an actual release date?
Well, I mean, we're hoping for July the 7th because they're 7 nanometer processors, right? So that makes
Oh,
sense.
it's 7.7.
Yeah, huh?
Mm.
Clever, huh?
Hmm.
Almost artistic because they're calling it Matisse.
Why would they give up a month if it could
I
be
don't
done
know.
at Computex?
I don't
get
know.
it. I smell a skunk. Maybe somebody just stepped on a stink bug. But go ahead, Jeremy.
Well, now that I'm thinking about sync bugs for some reason, we do get a bit of information. We do know that we're going to see a brand new chipset, the 500 series, but we're also told that don't worry, an update to the 300 or 400 that you have now will work with these processors after a quick BIOS flash, which is traditionally true for AMD. They don't tend to make you buy a new motherboard every generation that they put out. There'll be a Ryzen 3 3300, a Ryzen 5 that we know about, and one flagship Ryzen 9. Now, the 9 is kind of interesting. The 3850X is going to have 16 cores and 32 threads. And the base clock is going to be 4.3 gigahertz, but it boosts up to 5.1. We don't know if that's across all cores simultaneously or not, but regardless, that's beyond 5 gigahertz, which is really, really nice, especially if you're looking at multi-threaded tasks, which AMD is much stronger at, without even seeing what this new core can do. As far as the lower ones, no, there's going to be a lot of 12 core choices that are going to bounce around 3.8 to 4.6, up to one that's about 4.2 to 5. The Ryzen 5s are going to be a little bit slimmed down. So you're going to see 8 cores and 16 threads. Again, not like Intel's choosing to single thread some of their lower cost processors. And the Ryzen 3 3300, which has 6 cores. So you're looking at a processor that's going to be just a hair over $100 probably. It's going to offer you 6 cores. It's just absolutely beautiful. Now, along with these comes new APUs. So we know for sure about a 3600G and a 3300G. So it's going to have our first glance at Navi. So it's going to have Navi 12 integrated graphics, which is going to be kind of interesting to see how it can stack up with what's on the market right now, because we've sort of got an off balance on the GPU side where we've got ones that are ridiculously expensive and good performing to the ones that are just sort of, yeah, I got a 2-generational GPU and I'm not really thinking about upgrading. So it's going to be interesting to see how this fits in. It's just, as long as these do come out when we're hoping, it's going to be really, really nice. And of course, along with this, we are also hoping that we're going to see a bit of news about full-on Navi. So you're going to have to wait. And as Josh says, this is weird. Like, this is a long wait, but it's coming. And what other stuff did you pick out?
It is coming. I mean, maybe 7.7 they'll talk about Navi and be delivering it 2 or 3 months from then. I don't think that Navi is on schedule. I think it's a little bit later than they want it to be. I think that the CPU guys are probably raring at the bit to get that out. And so it wouldn't shock me if we saw, the 3000 series Ryzen at Computex and some of the first kind of motherboard designs, maybe not with, the chipsets that you want with it, namely the X570. Yeah, it's going to be the new top end. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird timing because they really want to have 7-nanometer EPYC and they want 7-nanometer Ryzen out as soon as possible because Intel's not sleeping. They're not, ignoring them. They're working hard to get their new products out. And every month that AMD is behind and not pushing product, if it's ready, is bad news for them because we can go into hours of talk about the issues with Intel and their 10 nanometer and their design and what they've been doing kind of behind the scenes and leadership and all this other stuff. I mean, it's kind of a shit show. Yeah. Sorry for my language, but it's. I
was going to say my bet is Navi, October, like Halloween at the earliest.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe September, October, but I think the AMD is focusing on their CPUs because that's where they've got good margin. They can sell a lot of stuff. Potentially the market is larger there. If they can get out mobile, desktop with integrated graphics and high-end desktop. And now with Threadripper, I mean, workstation, and up above that with Epic server, I mean, they want to be able to hit these price points, the margins, the performance, being able to get into these areas. And then I think their focus will eventually get back to GPUs, but right now CPUs is where they feel they have the best chance of making some serious money. And then we'll go into this later with the podcast versus, what AMD made in a quarter versus what NVIDIA made. I mean, you just look at AMD's products on the GPU side, and sure, Polaris is solid. It's a good product for the price. Vega 7, that's pretty expensive for what you get in terms of power and performance, and you can't really pick one up. So, we can kind of see they're really not focusing on GPUs as hard as they are on CPUs, and I think that they're going to push CPUs, at least at Computex, much harder. So maybe Navi will be announced 7.7, and they'll have some kind of bells and whistles around there with the entire, spectrum and platform. But maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. But I think Computex is going to be where AMD releases the big guns in terms of CPU, especially in Epic.
And I really hope they do it while Intel's still having issues providing chips to businesses. Consumer side, you don't worry about it. They'll cope in various ways. But for a business side, they're making a major purchase that's not going to last them 3 years, or if you're working a company like me, 10 or 15. And so if AMD can actually hit Epic coming out at the same time that Intel is having difficulty providing CPUs to Dell and to various other enterprise providers, it's going to be really, really good for their bottom line coming the first quarter of next year. If Intel gets ahead of them and this is delayed a little bit and we're not actually seeing product going until the end of the year, they've missed a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's anecdotal evidence.
Also true.
The Dell is telling their customers, if you don't want to wait for these Intel parts, which have a significant delay from when you order them to when you actually get them, you should really think about Epic. It's a pretty good product, and it's, affordable, and you can get it now. And there will be some people, not a huge amount, but there will be some who will change their mind because they have mission critical systems they need to implement, upgrade, or put in for the first time, and they'll go for Epic because they've got some VMware compatibility. They've got what looks to be a solid platform, and it's less expensive. It's got a lot of cores, and it still performs pretty well. May not be Intel, but HP, Dell, and others, they're starting to push AMD because they simply cannot sell parts that they can't get from Intel because there's a backlog in Xeon.
Well, speaking of Intel, and I don't really have anything to add to that. I mean, I've been staring at this image in the news posts of this CPU.
Chiplets.
Look, more chiplets. There's a space just perfect for another chiplet right there on the bottom right corner. Anyhow, Intel, not to be outdone in the rumors department, some European retailers apparently have posted some new Pentium chips, Pentium and Celeron. The front runner, of course, being the Pentium Gold. I'd forgotten about this branding. G5620. I don't know if any of you saw this news. I think it was yesterday or this morning that like Tom's Hardware was reporting it. Anon Tech had it yesterday. Basically, this is the 4 gigahertz chip with the Pentium name, which, for a dual core 4-thread part, 4 gigahertz it can only be a good thing. I would love to see what the pricing on this is going to be, though.
Better not be the same as Xeon Golds.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, that's the second I saw this. I'm like, why are you cross-branding with Xeon? This makes no sense.
I have questions about the branding of a lot of things. We could talk about my theories about NVIDIA branding of the RTX cards, etc. But anyhow, it was funny because when I was writing this post this morning, I was like, how much was the first Pentium when it came out? And I found, I think, an LA Times archived newspaper article from 1993 in December. They were like 1994 is going to be a great year for PC hardware. They're talking about all these like price drops where the Pentium was only going to be $700 and something dollars. It launched at $878 for the 60 megahertz Pentium in 1993.
And it had issues.
Yeah, it wasn't floating point was like
FDiv
forked.
bug.
Yes, that was the
FDiv,
FDiv.
baby. And it ran hot. 60 megahertz, even though it was fast as compared to previous generation, like DX266, it wasn't as fast as the DX280 and the DX4 100, 120, 133s that they called them from like AMD, their 486. But yeah, they ran hot, they were expensive, and they had FDiv issues.
You mean this DX4? This 100
do you have
megahertz
one?
DX4? Yeah, it's in my hand. Look at the.
Oh, that's an Intel one. It's not the AMD.
No, it's not the AMD. I wish I had the
But
AMD. The
it runs
AMD.
Lotus 123.
Yeah, it does. The AMD chips, from my understanding, is even at the same clocks or advertised clocks, they were faster. At least looking at
they
old
were a little
reviews.
bit faster.
Yeah.
Especially with like the DX40 was kind of their high point because the memory bus and the front side bus were all a little bit higher with the DX40 as compared to the DX33, and it performed very, very close to the DX266 because of all the other system kind of issues. And so the DX40 for AMD was really the sweet spot. And then they doubled it to the DX80, and it was really fast. It was a good processor for the time. DX280, sorry.
How fast did the Pentium 4s get, the single core Pentium 4s in like 2003 or 4, right before they went to the core architecture? Because weren't they in the high 3s? And I thought they hit 4.
Northwood went to the 3.2 and 3.4 gigahertz. And I think that was still single core. And then the Prescott went up to 3.4, 3.6. And then it just kind of petered out, and it wasn't till like Tualatin. Was it Tualatin? Or no, Penryn? I can't remember. There's too many code names in there.
But I'm not sure.
No, I think Penryn was Core 2.
Right? Yeah.
Was it Core 2?
Tualatin was
Core
like
2.
Pentium 3.
Yep. Yeah, Tualatin, Pentium 3. But yeah, no, it was net burst. I think it was 3.6 to 3.8.
Yeah, I
just remember the AMD presentations about millions of instructions per second. And look, we do so much better per clock than Intel can think of doing.
Yeah.
Well,
what about okay? Yeah, I already talked about Tualatin. So anyway,
which was the one that there was the one Pentium 3 core that was simultaneously on slot 1 and socket 370, right? Nothing.
Now, okay, I'm sorry. I was reading things and trying to figure stuff out, which of course didn't.
I want to know what the
fastest
Pentium 4 was.
I think it was 3.8 gigahertz. It was a Prescott 3.8.
Okay. Oh, Prescott. More like Press.
There you go.
Press hot. Yeah.
Hey, speaking of living dangerously, Jeremy, you posted something that I was a little alarmed by. It's like anytime I see anything about a BIOS flash that unlock things on GPUs, not only do I think of your AMD Radeon 6000 series, right? Wasn't it the 6950 you unlocked?
Was it the 7950 that I made into a 7970?
Yeah.
It lived for 2 years almost.
I remember unlocking. I didn't unlock. I flashed the BIOS on my Radeon 5870 to whatever brand had the unlocked. Because I had a stock one, like it was AM ATI branded one. But I put a different BIOS on it, and then I overclocked it to 1 gigahertz and just ran the hell out of it for like a year. But
And that
anyway.
particular model I had dual BIOS, so you could actually get it back. It was a physical switch, so I wasn't as nervous as I could have been.
Do you guys remember having to use a graphite pencil to unlock the old AMD CPUs back when they were naked dies? Oh yeah, that was the day. Or you actually sometimes you even had to solder leads to the back of your motherboard. Yeah, I'd killed quite a few motherboards doing that.
Oh, those were the days. But yeah, so if you don't mind the fact that you might kill your $1,000 plus card, there are a variety of ways to flash it, be it your Founders Edition or just like sort of a plain old vanilla RTX. And they've got them for 2060s, 2070s, 2080s, and 2080 Ti's. You can flash it to a factory overclocked card, which not so much the overclock as it is the power envelope. So some of these will open up the power envelope significantly higher than is designed for that card. This can be a bad thing, but if it was well designed and you've got it nicely cooled, in theory, you should be able to get a bit more out of it. It's certainly a danger, and this is at the point where you're reading the actual strings of it. So if you've got a TU 104 400A1, you can't. But if you got a TU 104 400A A1, you can. You really, really want to read through this before you even start thinking about it. Take a look at it, because unfortunately, it's not easy to go back nowadays. But hey, if you've just got a 2080 Ti lying around and you don't want to ship it to me, go right ahead and do it. I'm also glad it gave me a chance to like the Darkwing Duck.
Yeah. But you'll take it. In other words, you'll take it if they're not brave enough. Now, when you get it, will you do this? Will you unlock the BIOS? Or
I
flash?
Can say that I did.
Oh, okay. All right. You've got to take one for the team, Jeremy.
All right, fine. Send me a card. I'll flash it.
All right, perfect.
And then I'll flash the BIOS.
Oh, yeah. I'll flash it. Trust me, I will. I'll tell you I did. It's like, wait a minute, isn't that the same screenshot from your news post, Jeremy? Come on. All right. Jeremy, I know this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart.
It surely is. It's back, baby.
Is that an MX518?
6.
It is indeed.
You're holding that mouse by its tail.
Yeah, there isn't even any branding left on it. The poor thing. I've been using it for so long. But unfortunately, one of the switches went on it, and I am not Alan, so I am not good at doing tiny little replacements of solder. So it's sitting there, and maybe one day I will redo it. But now I don't have to, because it's coming back. And it's coming back at a decent price. Because as soon as I saw this,
better than ever.
Better than I ever. It's stronger. It's more powerful. It's bionic, or I mean, if RGB,
it's got an ARM 32-bit processor in it.
Oh yeah,
it's kind of weird.
Well, you mean you've got to be able to have the 18 profiles nowadays, and it's $60. Because I figure, this is a classic. They are going to get people like me who are like, yeah, well, $140 is a bit much, but it's honestly the best mouse I've ever used. And I mean, I picked up a 502 because I had a Steel Series Sensei that it was too flat and the plastic just did not feel right. And this is a good mouse, but it's not the same. And so replacing my 518, and I mean, it's got a Hero 16K sensor in it now. So like everything about it except the shell has been upgraded. The shell looks the exact same. The more or less the weight, the feel of it is going to be the exact same. And it's just, it's learned a few tricks over the years. So I'm honestly more stoked about a mouse coming back than I probably should be. But it was my first
long time ago.
mouse. Oh god, yeah.
Where's the RGB though? There's no RGB. Come on.
There is. So where on mine, where'd you go? this bit that's worn out, that's now RGB.
No,
It'll have
is
the
a
G
laser
logo,
light
like,
shining
No.
through it into your eyes?
No, see, Jeremy, this is the mouse that you need right here. See that?
Ah.
That's RGB.
Well, I mean, I'd have to turn it on, but this thing does the RGBs too. I have since disabled it because it does not help my mousing. And it's underneath my palm, so I can't even see it when I'm using it, for crying out loud.
I never had a 518. I still have my MX500. And I love the shape, and it's the same shape, so I will definitely have to pick one of these up too.
Yeah.
Especially because it has the updated sensor. Because actually tried the. There's nothing wrong with my 500 except for the fact that most of that soft touch plastic on the side of it is completely gone. But the sensor is just so much slower than the ones I've gotten used to, and especially when you're on high resolution screens, like, oh my god, like I have to move the mouse across my mouse pad, lift it, place it on the other side, move it again to get all the way across the screen. Sometimes, like, okay,
What are you playing,
enough.
Freelancer?
Just using high resolution screens for exciting things like creating charts.
Oh,
Reviews.
yeah.
But we can all agree.
Charge rock.
What?
I said charge rock.
Charge? Oh, I don't get the reference.
Especially when you're
Sorry.
measuring latency, and you've got a chart that has 19.2 milliseconds, and then you've got a 19.1 down here.
Jim, could we get a visual on that somehow? Is that possible?
The
best chart of the year. All right, excellent.
Like, give me 1 second. You guys here, I'll switch to the multi-feed. You talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah. Let us not ever say that statistics lie or that charts can be misleading. I don't know what scale they were using. Yeah. Come on, Jim. You can do it. Like, should we even name the outlet? I guess we should not.
Believe in you.
Oh no, we're gonna name this outlet.
Okay.
So I'm going to their website because this is not the only chart on there. Whoa. Some kind of issue.
Pop-ups. Jim, we talked about your browsing behavior.
Look,
See, you're mocking our site.
hang on. Where is it? This is unfortunately one of those sites I need an ad blocker for. It is chugging.
Tim posted.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Yes.
So this one's not so bad, but look at the scale on this GD effing chart. Latency in nanoseconds, 19.2, 19.1. Oh,
wow,
man.
look at that. Look at those gains. 0.1 milliseconds.
I sat here when I saw this. I couldn't tell if this was some sort of intentional meta humor commentary. I just don't, and even this one, there's actually a few points of difference, but not to that scale. You got to set your minimum values in your charts, folks.
Is it just me, or does the gradient background they're using make it look like those are like convex, like they're actually three-dimensional on the page?
A little bit.
Is it just sleep deprivation?
Yeah.
We're off the rails. I don't know what we're doing right now. We're looking at charts on, what was that website, Jim?
I closed it. I don't remember. I wiped it from my memory. No one needs to remember that.
We don't. Yeah, we've saved them. Let's move on to. It's what we've all been waiting for. I know back in January, I thought to myself, Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and I don't have any gift ideas, but all I want from Josh is NVIDIA's Q4 and yearly fiscal year 2019 financial results, which I think actually they had their call
in Q4 2019.
Wasn't it Valentine's Day that they had their call? Or was it the 15th?
Yeah,
anyway,
it was 14th.
Josh.
2018 was a bit of a mixed bag for NVIDIA. They had grown their business quite a bit. I mean, it was significant. They had reached, 3.1 billion a quarter at the highest. But then a couple of bad things happened. One, blockchain died badly. And so that affected things. NVIDIA, not NVIDIA, but in Nintendo Switch, it started out with a bang and then has slowed down pretty dramatically. Autos. They'd been slowly building, and then it kind of took a small turn at the end of this year. So last quarter, they had 3.1 billion in revenue and some insane amount of net income. I think in the 700 million range. It was impressive. They had a great quarter. It was probably the most that they had ever had. The latest, I think they call it Q4 2019, because their whole reporting thing is a little strange in how they record it. They had 2.2 billion in revenue, and it dropped pretty dramatically from the previous quarter. And a lot of that was from, it really multiple areas. Automotive went down. They've had a whole lot more competition from AMD in terms of visualization and, kind of the higher end computing. And their gaming went down. And we kind of wonder why. And a lot of that may be, and they haven't actually talked about this much, the RTX series have not sold as much as they were hoping. They thought this is the next generation of product. It's got a lot of extra features. We have a little bit extra performance versus the previous GTX 10 series at whatever area. But boy, it was an interesting quarter. Their margins took a huge dive from almost 60.4% to 54.7%. And that's pretty significant because the RTX 2000 series is a much larger die than the GTX 1000 series at kind of every step. And sure, as a consumer, you pay a little bit more for the features and a little bit more for the extra performance at each kind of step, but we didn't see the kind of jumps that we have seen in the past, from the 700 to the 900 series, 900 to the 1000 series. And I think a lot of people were expecting another big jump with the 2000, but we got something a little different. We got RTX, we got machine learning, DLSS, stuff like that takes up a lot of die space. So these dies have become much larger. They're more expensive to produce, even though that, now they're on the 16/12 nanometer process, and it's a more mature foundation. So they don't pay as much per wafer as they did back in the day when 16 nanometer was initially released. But yeah, they're taking a small hit. They're still about double the revenue of AMD, which AMD is selling not only GPUs but CPUs, and not only CPUs but high-end CPUs that are in workstations and servers and whatnot. And so the margins have improved for that company, but not to the point where they're at or even close to NVIDIA. The GPUs were accounting for something like $1.9 billion in between professional and gaming GPUs. The rest is automotive Tegra and some other products in there that got them up to the 2.2 billion. There's just kind of a lot going on. I mean, we kind of look at this and we see our market dropping a little bit. I mean, AMD does not have anything that really competes well. I mean, sure, the Radeon 7 is out, but it's in incredibly small numbers and nobody can really get them. Their Polaris stuff is a couple of years old, and even though they exist nicely in a price performance envelope, they aren't really gaining a whole lot of share. I think the area where they're actually gaining some share is in the professional space. There's some areas where the Vega 7 or Radeon 7 as I call it, and the previous Vega architectures, which are, the professional graphics, they're starting to eat in a little bit into what NVIDIA has there with their Quadros and their Teslas and these type of products, because math is math. And if you can throw a whole bunch of math at a problem, and if you code it well, it's going to do well. It's going to do okay. And I think the price performance of AMD's higher end Vega 7 nanometer parts is probably eaten into a little bit of what NVIDIA is doing. But still, NVIDIA had a very good quarter. Their margins went down, but they still made money. And they still made a lot of money. And this is money that they're going to reinvest in the company and do things a little bit differently. Maybe try to push RTX type stuff more. I don't know. My feeling here is that RTX features probably could have waited until they jumped to 7 nanometer. But, I think they wanted to be a little bit more proactive, a little bit more aggressive, especially with AMD not doing as well as they had hoped with the original Vega, with the Polaris series going to 14 nanometer, and then, jumping onto 7 nanometer. I mean, they haven't really hit their stride in terms of graphics. I mean, GCN/Vega architecture just doesn't seem to scale up nearly as efficiently as what NVIDIA is able to do with their products. So it's going to be hard to say what happens. I think NVIDIA will continue to make money. They have a good product, but there isn't a whole lot of consumer excitement in the area that is essentially the meat and bones of their business, which is gaming GPUs. So, they're a well-run company. They typically learn from their mistakes. And I'm sure that they will recover from this eventually, but they have opened a window for AMD, yet sadly, AMD has no product to really take advantage of this. So in the time being, NVIDIA will still make money. They have good products. RTX is not as widely embraced as they would obviously hope to be, but it's still a good product. And I think that we will see some things in the next couple of weeks that may change people's mind about certain price points. But until then, NVIDIA's making money. They've got good margins. They've had very successful years. They're $2 billion plus a quarter, which is tremendous from where they were and where their competition is. And, we're going to see some interesting things in the future and hopefully in the near future. But who knows? Comments?
I wish my quarter was that disappointing. I'd be very, very happy if that was my quarter.
Gee, I wonder if they'll do anything to try to spice up the GPU landscape, maybe bolster their sales a little bit.
Gosh, I wonder where the meat of those sales are. Meat. Because the 2060, while a good product, is still considered somewhat overpriced for what you get and has somewhat unusable RTX features.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the RTX part there doesn't make sense unless you're running a really low resolution.
And it's really good at 640 by 480.
DLSS, it has definitely shown that it needs work. They had a blog post that came out and addressed DLSS issues. I think kind of in the aftermath of some of the Metro Exodus stuff that was coming out, like the preview articles. I know Tom's did one. There was some other stuff out there where they were showing screenshots, and DLSS is not fare as well in screenshots as it does in motion. The Port Royal benchmark is the one that had been like our initial exposure to DLSS at CES, but that's a predefined canned benchmark. where they were able to train the AI, and they probably, who knows how much time they spent on that behind the scenes before we saw it. And it looked great. But then these other games where you have more freedom of movement and there's a lot more variables, obviously, in a standard game, it struggles. And we saw gains drop to from 50% with Port Royal to 40% with Battlefield, and then down to up to 30% with Metro Exodus. But then the image appears to be notably softer, less sharpness, that sort of thing. So they said, well, there's more time. Obviously, it needs to be. It's like a training issue at this point, I guess. So we'll see. But like Josh was saying earlier, this feels like a technology that did not need to come out yet. It's interesting, but my own thinking is, and if they appointed, like, if they hired me and I was in charge of their products, I would say, stay the course with GTX, release new GTX parts that are faster, do those year-over-year gains, and stay. I mean, I guess I don't know where I'd be if I was actually inside of NVIDIA with pricing, but I, as a consumer and as somebody who watches this industry, I have a very hard time with the current pricing of cards, which they've crept up over time, but 500 was about as high as I would ever want to go with a GPU. And then now we're up to $700 for what would have been last year, like the $500 card, essentially. And this is kind of where the branding problem is, if that makes any sense. Like the RTX is a brand, like the 2000, or the 2000 is the series. RTX is the branding, but they don't append like that designation to the end of the series anymore, like they did with like the 8800 GT and GTX and Ultra. So now we have these 2000 series cards that are $699 and $999 for the 2080 and the 2080 Ti, which is just, it's incredible, especially when you look at what you were getting with Pascal, which is almost 2 years old now, or actually is 2 years old now. I was looking at the old GTX 2070 review the other day. That was like May of 2016. And that is a card that all the way in like January of 2019, we finally get to the point where a $350 card, the RTX 2060, comes out, and it eclipses the 1070 and basically ties the 1070 Ti. But it's been like a year and a half, going on 2 years to get to that point, and 350. I still think it's pretty fair for the performance you're getting if you think of it as the 1070 Ti. But at the same time, I totally get the argument that it's just too expensive, just across the board. And like Josh was saying, RTX features on the 2060 don't really make any sense. So then it's really just DLSS. And at that point, the DLSS technology.
It's just so weird, their stack. I mean, I understand, they're spending more on bill of materials. I mean, the die sizes are bloated as compared to the Pascal stuff. I mean, you do get the increase in performance, and so a 2080 kind of performs like a 1080 Ti, but you still pay as much for that. I mean, the 2070 eclipses the 1080, but you still pay as much. It's not like previously where we saw, the 970 was introduced at like a $499, and then it dropped down to $299 eventually. And then the 1070 came out, and it eclipsed the performance of the 970 by a significant degree, but didn't break $500. Well, initially, because blockchain wasn't taken into nearly as account as it was. But you could initially get those for not a whole lot more than a decked out 970, and you'd get a big jump in performance. Not so much in features, but performance, and you got double the memory. You got, went from a 970 with 4 gigs and you had a 1070 with 8 gigs, and you didn't have the crazy 970 memory controller thing that, fractionalized one off, and you had a shared memory bandwidth for the last, two 500 meg slots. I can't remember all of it, but it's just, yeah, it's so strange to look at how they market it. And I understand from just die size and cost, but still, a lot of people look at this and say there's no compelling reason for me to upgrade, to spend $200 to get these RTX features that may or may not really improve my experience and certainly will not improve my performance, or I'd stay with my 1070, my 1060. And
Yeah.
I'll get 95% of what I'm seeing here. And, I don't see a reason to upgrade. That's, don't get me wrong. I love technology. I'd love to see it, but I'm not made of money. So I'm not going to get a 2080 Ti for $1,200. It just is, that's a house payment for a lot of people, and they're not going to do it.
Was Pascal too good for 2016? I mean, that's a ridiculous question. I actually posed this to you earlier in the week, Josh. It's like,
I don't think it was. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, if they were sitting on something that was such a massive, if you go from the 900 series to the 10 series, huge gains. Like Pascal's just in another league, and especially like the 1070. The 1070 came out at 329, I believe, somewhere around there. That's just nuts for the performance you get from the 1070, which even today is still kind of like a benchmark especially for that price range.
I would not say that it was too good for the time. I think the focus in NVIDIA, they were a little too aggressive with DLSS, the machine learning stuff, and RTX. Because if they would have taken what they learned from Pascal and applied that to the new design rules that kind of, compress, but still allows good performance in terms of, die size and whatnot, and gone to the new 12 nanometer stuff, allowed it to achieve better performance, done some of the internal things that they did with the RTX chips in terms of just the DX11, DX12 performance and the shaders and rasterizers without going into RTX, ray tracing, and machine learning, they would have had another massive leap in performance with new GDDR6 memory. But they didn't go that way. They kind of threw in the kitchen sink with RTX at a spot where they sacrificed too much die space in terms of performance and thermals to really get that jump that we had been expecting from the 700 series to the 900 series to the 1000 series. And it just kind of stalled out because they added everything. I mean, seriously, kitchen sink to this GPU. And yeah, you've got a little bit better performance in terms of the regular kind of rendering stuff with DX11, DX12. But you throw RTX in there and your performance kind of goes to crap, even though you get some limited ray tracing type stuff and some interesting lighting effects with applications that actually support it, which there are two. It's not very compelling.
We could talk about this all night.
All night.
And my harebrained ideas about them being slower I mean, Pascal, they released it and it was great and it sold incredibly well. And I mean, you look at the Steam hardware survey charts, like that's still a big part of like the top 10, the top 15. And for a lot of people, that's like good enough. That's the problem. Like it was like DVD. You went from broadcast like standard def to HD. That was a big jump. And to go from HD to 4K, like there are some people who just don't see it, like, or they just don't care. It was like going from VHS to DVD. Once people saw that, they didn't care about Blu-ray. I used to work in retail in electronics, and people did not care about Blu-ray. And when Blu-ray came out and movie studios started switching over to Blu-ray, there was a lot of outrage. If you look at those multi-packs, like the DVD and Blu-ray, those were the only things I could sell people. Like, it's the only way you're going to be able to get the DVD. And they would pay $30 for a Blu-ray, DVD, and digital copy set when they had bought the Blu-ray alone for like 18, because they did not care. They would not buy a $100 Blu-ray player because they just couldn't see the difference.
Especially early Blu-rays, though. I remember watching the prequels on the Star Wars prequels, and the very early Blu-rays, colors just popped oddly because it was so hyper realistic that it would look very out of place if you compared that to the DVD. I mean, yes, the resolution was far and away better, but the colors and the colors and all that just popped oddly. So now it's fine. 4K. It just, the colors looked weird. It was like it was almost a hyper realistic look. I don't remember. But that was very early in the Blu-rays again. 4K too. 4K, 4K by itself is crap. You really need to get HDR. But again, unless you have something, if you only run 1080p, which most broadcasts are nowadays, you're not going to notice anything. You have to get a good UHD movie to really see 4K with HDR differences.
Yeah.
I fear that we are drifting way off course.
Jim, yeah, you're right. Way off. Do we have time for any more news? We had a couple more stories here. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the biggest news of the day as we record this on February 20, a day that will be long remembered, as Samsung has finally fulfilled the dream of dozens of people, and they have announced their foldable phone. It's the dream, back in the Microsoft Courier days of the 2008 to 2010 years, and then subsequently the Microsoft Andromeda rumored dual screen folding device. But yes, Galaxy Fold, available April 26th. You can actually
you
buy
can't even see you can't even see the line in the middle. At least in that picture.
It's seamless.
Yes, it's $2,000.
Yeah, but yeah, it's $2,000.
That's inexpensive at half its price.
It's twice as much screen for 3 times as much money. The Galaxy Fold.
And I've got to close the Verge tab here because this thing is just destroying my browser. Talk about over-engineering a website design. My God.
Too much. Neil knows best, and you need to leave him alone.
I don't want him to sue me.
Yeah. You're gonna this video on YouTube is actually gonna get us.
That is slander, sir.
You were slandering our site while showing our site. That's not fair use. That's unfair use.
Get used to it.
And the other sort of mainstream news of the week, besides the Samsung phone, order now, available April 26th for just $1,980, is that Google, Jeremy, you posted this, another sort of embarrassing security-related gaffe for the masters of embarrassing security. Well, Facebook too, but Google. What has Google done now?
Well, they totally meant to tell you about the secret microphone in the Nest Secure home security system. They just innocently forgot. It was a complete and total oversight. Although, to be perfectly fair, every other bloody device that you order that's a Nest has a microphone in it, so maybe you should have assumed. But the way that they did it was just brilliantly, because they just sort of sent out an email to the owners of the Nest Secure saying, oh, by the way, we're going to be enabling the microphone inside of your device soon. To which everyone went, the who and the what now are you saying? And Google, of course, is like, well, trust us, we totally haven't turned it on, and we're not recording stuff that's going on around you through that microphone. The other ones, I mean, well, it's okay. So it's just a ridiculously bad way of rolling out a feature and disclosing that you've put something in that you didn't bother to mention, and an incredibly creepy response after people were understandably upset. But I mean, we're talking about the same bloody day that Nike shoes turned into bricks. So I'm gonna say it's the internet of shit, and you're gonna have to get used to it. It is completely unsecure. It is never going to be updated, and chances are it is spying on you in ways you're not even imagining. If you're okay with that, go out and buy it, because even like the thing that's just sensors to say a window is open or closed, or a door is open or closed, well, the base station it's going to be recording you. And it's probably going to be uploading it to your Samsung TV, which is then uploading it to social media and so on and so forth. But it's the converged world, so just learn to love it, I guess. And we've always been at war with East Asia.
I keep coming back to this meme whenever stories like this happen. It's perfect. And for those on the audio version, it's you've probably seen this floating around Reddit and Twitter. It's a scene from the 60s that says, people in the 60s, I better not say that or the government will wiretap my house. People today, and it shows a young woman in her kitchen saying, hey, wiretapped, you got a recipe for pancakes.
It's so true, because they don't care. I talk about security and privacy related issues with people that I know, and I think below a certain age, they don't really understand what you're saying or don't care, because the convenience of being connected and basically having like targeted advertising and all the other stuff that you get because you're being tracked everywhere you go online, that's cool. Like, this is so, oh, look, that thing I was just talking about with my friend, I just got an ad for it on my watch. Like, that's because it's listening to you. But,
Yeah. Well, and the flip side, which is going to be very entertaining, and I think the next 5 to 10 years. Remember, like, Ma, don't tell people about that. It's embarrassing. Well, now they're not telling their neighbor or their friend. They've actually posted that Facebook and every other social media site since you were born, you poor little prog. And by the time you hit teens, you're going to realize that everything is already out there and you can't get rid of it. So you just, good luck with that, kid. Have fun.
this is why I recommend using Windows 3.1. And not for work groups, just offline. Never connect to the internet and just play old games.
Well, Sebastian, you could probably use that online because it's so old that hackers wouldn't even have the stuff to be able to crack it anymore. They've gotten rid of all those tools years ago.
I don't think it even has TCP/IP.
No.
It may be NetBIOS only.
Yeah.
I don't know.
When was TCP? It wasn't. Didn't NT4
It's
have
Windows for
TCP?
work groups, I think.
Yep.
Well, at least on the consumer side.
3.1? 3.1 I thought was, or maybe 3. Was it 3.11 that was equivalent to NT4?
Yeah, I think it was 3.11.
Because I remember
Anyway,
in college I was playing with NT4.
That's 25 years ago. 25. I was in college.
Wait, 20? No, I think it was. Yeah. God.
Yeah, it's 1994. 1992 to 94 is when 3.1 for work groups. 3.11. Anyway,
Yeah, this is just
moving along.
3.11. This is just 3.1 from 92. Anyhow, I think that pretty much covers. I mean, there's a couple of other things, but we're running very long here, I think. So let's move on. Let's quickly cover our picks of the week, and it looks like we all have one. Jim.
All right. Well, actually, I have two. One real quick, I forgot to add to the show notes, and that is something pretty cool. I got an email from a listener named Sean, who since this summer has been indexing our podcasts at the TVDB. If you're not familiar, it's a community where people track television shows and seasons and episodes. And so he went in and indexed our podcast, and it's got all the episodes. So if you were to download our podcast to Plex or any other media manager that uses the TVDB, it'll match it and pull the metadata.
Don't. I was there. Don't do it. Good God. No.
Well, it's
someone delete that
for educational purposes. But so thank you, Sean. That's awesome. And he says he's going to maintain it going forward. So that's great. So for the poor fools who choose to bring us into your media servers, you'll have some metadata for it at least. And then my second pick is a podcast that I've been listening to for years, and I realized I never really talked about it in this context with you guys. So I'm not sure if this audience knows about it, but it's the HDTV and Home Theater podcast. It's a casual podcast. These guys aren't like hardcore experts. They're like enthusiasts, and they've been doing it for 15 years or something. They're like on episode 883. It's a once a week show, and they're 883 episodes in. And it's a weekly rundown of the news, the developments in home theater tech, audio codecs, new TV formats, streaming. And it's a nice casual 30 to 40 minute show each week. And the hosts and Braden are just good guys. So if you're looking for like a nice casual podcast to get you a little bit of your home theater fix, check it out on iTunes. It's the HD TV and Home Theater podcast.
Who's next? Is it Jeremy?
Sure, why not? Hey, so you got a kid in the house, or you're just, sort of clumsy yourself. And so you go through a fair number of mice, keyboards, and headsets. Well, there's a great deal on the Canadian Newegg site right now, the Gamma DS Poseidon M1 combo, which after the mail-in rebate is $20. And so you get a mouse, you get a headset, and you get a keyboard that will survive a couple of moderate spills. So instead of handing your kid hand-me-downs or just, here's the keyboard I know you're just about to kill dead, this is actually going to last a little bit. And at $20, it's just a stupidly easy buy. It's not going to be the best, but it's got the RGBs. It's got the sexy headset. Or I'm sorry, it's called the Eros. As I said, the keyboard is designed to take a couple of spills before it finally dies. It's worth it if you've got a relative, if you've got kids, or like you say, if you just sometimes spill your beer. So there.
It reminds me of, I think it was last week, LGR's video was about this like kid-friendly keyboard from the mid-1990s, and he was like smearing peanut butter on it and dumping milk on it while he was playing Duke Nukem 3D. And it didn't quit working because it was basically just one of those like strips, like those roll-out flat keyboards, membrane keyboards, but it was like attached to a plastic base. But those things are dreadful to type on, but that seems like it's like the answer. I would not give my son a keyboard right now. He is very excited by any kind of RGB lighting on keyboards, though, I will say. And he goes up to whatever I'm using.
Does he like painter's tape on keyboards?
That's an inside joke, everyone. It refers to my creative methods of repairing toys, which for various reasons ended up in blue painter's tape with a Starship Enterprise.
Whatever happened to the equivalent of that plastic wrap on couches that you used to get for keyboards? That was just
damn stylish. Was it Fellows who sold all that stuff?
Oh yeah,
you get like the monitor one, and there was one for your keyboard, and there was one for your tower, which makes a lot of sense. Like you want to, just turn off your Pentium 4 and just shove this thing down over it, nice and airtight.
It'll melt a hole where it needs.
True, that's true.
Do you guys remember when a non-tech wrapped their test systems in saran wrap to stop airflow?
No, why would they do this?
For testing.
Okay.
It seemed like a good idea at the time. But then
Was it
people didn't
test?
realize that airflow is there for a reason, because you put power into it, heat is going to accumulate. So anyway, yeah, it was
Well, that
it
was
was a
up there
dumb
with
idea.
Tom's pulling the heat sink off of CPUs to see if they got fire or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess it's me. Unless Jeremy, did you not? You talk.
It's you, Josh.
Yep. No, reveal yourself, Josh.
Quit stalling, Josh. It's you. It's you.
Gosh, proving he still has
I
hair
gotta
somewhere.
change the rating on the stream. Hang on.
Okay. Anyway, I've got the higher end gaming version of this monitor, but if you don't want to pay that much and still get, I think, 75 hertz, if you're attached to DisplayPort, this is a nice monitor for a good price. $600, 34-inch, 21x9, $1,900 curve. I've really enjoyed this in the Alienware version. Pretty much same panel. It's fantastic. If you want widescreen, if you want to do racing, if you want to do sim games, anything, it's a really nice deal for a really good looking monitor. So there you have it. $600 still a lot, but do your shopping. But it's nice.
That's almost 3 feet wide, isn't it? That's very wide.
Yeah.
All right.
So the name of your pick really, really worries me.
What? Panda Power?
Yeah.
This is- I was not expecting this. I actually had forgotten that they sent stuff, but Choey Tech, they're a brand that on Amazon that I actually bought. I think I bought USB Type-C cables from them and didn't really think anything of it. The company reached out to me a while back now and asked about like reviewing some of their stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. I kind of looked over their product catalog. And one of the things was like, oh, hey, you sell like a really inexpensive charging pad, a wireless charging pad. I should see if it's any good. So it's been sitting here for a while. Finally took it out of the packaging like 2 days ago and plugged it in and threw my phone down on it. Works fine. It's 7.5 watt fast charging wireless pad. And on Amazon, if you look these up, they start, I think this is pretty much at the lowest price point. The particular one that they sent was $15. Seems completely fine. Doesn't come with an adapter or anything. You still have to supply your own USB power to the wall. But if you plug your phone charger into this, and then throw your phone down on it, charges reasonably fast. Like this is kind of like the same as plugging into like a USB port in your computer. It's not crazy fast. And I think most phones now, most higher end phones have fast charging, like Qualcomm quick charge, or obviously this would not work with like iPhone's fast charging because it's like you have to use Apple's adapter and Apple's cable. But anyhow, for a cheap wireless charging pad that just uses the standard wireless charging, like the Qi charging standard, this gets the job done and it's $15. And the one I have has a panda on it. So I mean, if you're into pandas, there's a non-panda version I see on Amazon as well. It's $20. So I mean, obviously go with the panda. That's all I got. Maury, did you have a pick?
I did. So when USB 3.1 when USB 3.1 first came out, the challenge I had was, especially with the motherboard reviews, was finding some kind of enclosure adapter that would perform better than USB 3.0. Because if you're testing 3.1, you can't max out, or you can't get faster than 500 megabyte per second or a gig per second. You're not really able to show how well it performs. The enclosure that Jim should be showing you, the My Digital SSD M2X actually takes a NVMe M.2 drive and will allows you to use it over USB 3.1, either Type C or Type A port, or a USB 3.0, or even USB 2.0 if you choose to. It only works, or well, actually, it will take it. It will take the problem with the early adapters that came out, because I've tried many different enclosures, and this is the only one I found that really works. Previously, they had enclosures like this, but they were only compatible with PCIe X2 cards, the X2 M.2 cards. If you put an X4 in there, it wouldn't work because you have the B key and the M key. This one is actually an M key type design, so it will work with a PCIe X4 M.2 drive. It works really well. I have not had. I've started using it past couple motherboard reviews. Have no issues with it. It comes with both as I said, a Type C cable and a Type A cable. So, and it just works really well. It's nice if you have if you upgrade your computer every once in a while, you have spare NVMe M.2 drives. You can use this and have an easy, very fast, portable solution. So
Nice.
They
And then
really missed out. This could have been the first thing that could have used a sex port. It could have been a SATA
a
Express.
sex port. Oh, yeah, I know.
The first and only peripheral.
Hey, it's a valid standard. So, like U.2. Look at all the U.2 products that are out there. So glad it's a feature of
They still haven't found what they're looking for.
Yeah. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for watching or listening to us. We do this every week. Like I said at the top, that was like 2 hours ago. We've been podcasting for a very long time. It is almost midnight here in the Eastern time zone. And I should probably go to bed. But you can catch us, at pcper.com. You can follow us on Twitter if you'd like. Obviously, at Josh D. Walraff. If you want burger updates every Wednesday. What kind of burger did you have today, by the way, Josh?
You're muted again.
He had the muted Heroes burger.
I had the Greek burger. It was a half lamb, half beef burger with tzatziki sauce, red onions, tomatoes, ciabatta bun. It's really good.
Was there any
Nice.
feta on it? Any olives? No, not that kind of
No.
Greek. So this is more like almost like a, what is it, a gyro?
No,
It's a
other
gyro
kind of
in a
Greek.
burger. Yeah,
A gyro burger. Okay. Well,
good stuff.
I will say
Anybody?
for everyone, Josh wants to do a mailbag. So because we haven't done those since we need to come up with a name for the Exodus, the events that transpired at the end of the year last year.
we could just call it like it was a different dynasty. It was the
Bunch of Nancy Reagans.
It was the
I don't know.
Ryan.
Let's just
the
say
Shroud
we
era, the
changed it.
Shroud dynasty.
The Shroud Dynasty has ended. At the end of the Shroud Dynasty, we just haven't gotten around to doing the mailbags because we've been just trying to get new things going, but we want to get that back up. Josh wants to do one next week. So if you have questions for Josh, I'm sorry?
Maybe we can just say it's now Istanbul, not Constantinople.
Perhaps. I think there's additional meaning to that I don't want to be associated with. But if you have questions for Josh, send him a tweet, send the tweet to PCPer, hop in our Discord server. The link is, I'll put it in the show notes to this episode. It's in our chat as well. Get the questions to us, email, whatever, and we'll have Josh get those for you next Friday.
I can do that.
I just have to say, North Ranger in the chat, the excommunication. That's what it was.
That's not bad.
Now, if
So
only
we're the
Anthony can
Protestants?
if he can do a Photoshop of that would be fantastic.
Yes. And we can finally see you in your nun's outfit.
Yes, I need to
No.
see Josh as a nun. This
No.
needs to happen. It would be so easy.
Okay, maybe if you could do the flying nun, sure. But
Oh,
otherwise,
for
no.
sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Josh is flying nun.
I mean, Sally Field's pretty hot for.
Oh, yeah. Well, she was.
Yeah.
She is, Come on, man.
Yeah. If you're into that.
Don't
judgment
dig a
here.
deeper hole. Yeah, no judgment zone. This is
Anyway.
a judgment-free podcast, Josh.
Yeah, we do that on Twitter.
Someone said Josh Wick.
Ooh. I get
can
it,
work.
like John Wick.
I don't think you can move that fast.
I don't think Keanu can move that fast. It's all trick
Yeah.
photography.
Josh would be
But I
throwing
would-
keyboards instead of shooting.
I would mess people up if they messed with my dog.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah. So
Did I
are
sign
we
out?
done? Did you actually?
We
do
haven't
the sign
officially
out
wrapped
yet?
it. Yeah.
Oh, for
Right.
the love of God.
Thanks for watching or listening. Or I could also say, see you next week. Or just goodbye.